Most men grow up believing that power is something you ask for, that respect is negotiated, that attraction is earned through effort, explanation, consistency, and emotional availability. And that belief is precisely why their voice tightens when they speak, why their shoulders subtly collapse forward when they wait for a response, why their breathing becomes shallow the moment silence appears, why their eyes search for confirmation instead of holding space. Here is the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. Women do not react first to your words. They react to your internal position long before your mouth opens. And the moment your body asks instead of occupies, the dynamic is already lost. Not because you said something wrong, but because your nervous system revealed submission before intention. The invisible error is never verbal. It lives in tempo, in hesitation, in the micropauses that signal doubt, in the way your chest retracts instead of expanding, in how your gaze flickers when you wait to be validated. And what you're about to uncover is not a trick, not a line, not manipulation, but a silent law of power, one that Machiavelli understood centuries before modern psychology gave it a name. Power is never requested, it is perceived. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly, not intellectually. At what exact moment in your life did you notice that the more you tried to explain yourself, the less seriously you were taken? There is a phase every man passes through where he believes being understood will grant him authority. So he clarifies, he justifies, he over-contextualizes his intentions, he fills silence with logic. But something strange happens in that phase. The more he speaks, the smaller the room feels. The more he tries to be transparent, the less gravity his presence carries. And without realizing it, his body begins to betray him. His posture softens, his breathing accelerates, his tone rises at the end of sentences, unconsciously asking for agreement. His words start orbiting the reaction of the other person instead of coming from an internal axis. This is the moment respect begins to dissolve, not dramatically, not visibly, but structurally. Because respect is not an opinion, it is a physiological response, and the body always speaks first. The man who seeks approval lives in reaction. His internal compass is externalized. His nervous system calibrates itself based on feedback instead of direction. And women, consciously or not, sense this immediately. Not because they analyze it, but because their nervous system recognizes instability before their mind creates a story. Attraction at its core is not about desire, it is about orientation. Who is grounded? Who is centered? Who holds emotional weight without dispersing it through explanation? This is why the man who tries to impress rarely does, and the man who tries to convince almost always repels. Because power is not volume, it is density. Think of presence like gravity. A planet does not announce itself. It does not negotiate its pull. It simply exists, and objects adjust around it. The reactive man believes movement creates power. The centered man understands stillness creates influence. There is a silent transition that happens when a man stops trying to be received and starts choosing his position internally. His body slows, his breath deepens. His voice drops not in pitch, but in certainty. Silence stops feeling dangerous, and something extraordinary occurs. People begin to lean in without knowing why. This is not dominance. This is not arrogance. This is direction. Modern psychology confirms what ancient philosophy already knew. Humans unconsciously seek nervous systems that regulate space, not amplify chaos. Studies on emotional regulation show that individuals with stable internal states exert disproportionate influence over group dynamics, without speaking more, without asserting control, without demanding compliance. Machiavelli never spoke about attraction in the modern sense, but he understood perception better than most men understand themselves. To him, authority was not claimed. It was assumed through consistency of internal alignment. The man who constantly signals intention without asking permission changes the emotional temperature of the room, not because he dominates others, but because he dominates his own reactions. This is where the transformation begins, the shift from the man who waits to the man who decides, the shift from the man whose body leaks urgency to the man whose presence creates calm tension, the shift from the man who hopes to be chosen to the man who chooses himself first. And once this axis is installed internally, something irreversible happens. You stop explaining, not because you are hiding, but because nothing inside you is unstable enough to need defense. You stop rushing, not because you are indifferent, but because time bends around grounded intention. You stop asking for respect, because your body no longer broadcasts the need for it. And this is only the first layer, because the real mechanism, the one most men never access, is not behavioral. It is somatic. It is the recalibration of how you inhabit space. And once you feel it, you can never unfeel it. There is a moment, quiet, internal, almost invisible, when a man stops trying to manage how he is perceived and starts governing how he exists. Nothing external changes immediately. No dramatic shift in behavior, no sudden confidence display. But internally, something locks into place. His emotional center no longer floats toward approval. His attention no longer leaks outward searching for confirmation. His body stops negotiating its own position in space. This is the moment power becomes embodied. Most men misunderstand authority because they believe it comes from action, from saying the right thing, from asserting boundaries verbally, from showing certainty. But certainty that needs to be shown is already fractured. True authority is quiet because it does not depend on reaction. It is heavy, not loud. It slows the room instead of chasing it. The reactive man is always slightly ahead of himself. He answers before being asked. He explains before being questioned. He moves before direction is established. And his body reveals this impatience through micro-signals: the rushed cadence, the shallow breathing, the restless posture, the eyes that search instead of hold. The directing man does the opposite, not deliberately but structurally. He allows space to stretch. He lets silence exist without tension. He speaks from a settled internal rhythm. And because his nervous system is no longer seeking relief, it becomes a point of regulation for others. This is not dominance, it is containment. Modern neuroscience describes this as emotional regulation under social pressure, the capacity to remain internally stable while being observed, evaluated, or tested. Philosophy called it sovereignty long before science could measure it. Machiavelli understood it intuitively. The ruler who reacts loses authority. The ruler who maintains composure commands it without effort. This principle applies far beyond politics. It governs attraction, respect, influence. Women do not respond to men who attempt to control outcomes. They respond to men who control their internal state while outcomes remain uncertain. Because uncertainty exposes the nervous system. The man who still needs reassurance accelerates. The man who still needs clarity over-explains. The man who still needs validation adjusts himself to be accepted. And each adjustment dissolves polarity. Polarity is not created by effort. It is created by contrast. A grounded presence creates tension simply by not moving. A centered man becomes a reference point. This is why manipulation fails. Manipulation requires constant correction. It leaks intention. It reveals dependence on results. Internal command requires none of that. When you no longer rush to fill silence, silence starts working in your favor. When you no longer justify your boundaries, they become non-negotiable. When you no longer signal desire, desire begins to respond. This is the hidden mechanism behind the title. Power is not something you ask for because asking implies instability. Power is something others feel when your internal direction does not bend toward them, not because you are cold, but because you are anchored. The man who embodies this does not chase respect. Respect forms around him because his emotional axis is stable. He does not try to be attractive. Attraction emerges from the way he inhabits space without urgency. He does not control others. He controls his reactions. And that is enough. This is the final transformation. From the anxious man to the centered man. From the reactive man to the man who conducts. From the man who asks to the man who receives. Once this internal identity installs itself, performance becomes unnecessary. Only alignment remains. This is not a trick, not a tactic, not manipulation. It is a code, a system of internal governance, a reprogramming of emotional tempo, direction, and presence. And once you operate from this axis, the world adjusts quietly, predictably, inevitably, because real power never needs to be requested. It is simply felt.